Good morning. I am Esther Wein, but I don't know about the Wonder Woman thing. I guess they got carried away a little bit. I'm so happy to be here with you in South Africa for two reasons. First of all, your community, the Jewish community of South Africa, is known and beloved far and wide. We, Worldwide Jewelry, has gained so much from what you've done here, your Shabbos project, even Sinai and Daba, and I am grateful that I have a chance personally to give back a little bit. And the second reason that I'm so grateful and thankful that I'm here is because I was very, very fortunate. I was able, by virtue of my being born to a family and marrying into a family of great Torah scholars and great Jewish leaders, I was fortunate to be exposed to and to be taught and to learn deep wisdom from the Torah that I heard from my father and my father-in-law and my grandfather, Rabbi Shimon Schwab. And the Torah that I learned was Torah they learned from their parents and their grandparents and their grandparents all the way back. And it is a great merit to be able to share with you that Torah. And in fact, the ideas we will be studying today, and this is a study class. I am really not a speaker, I am a teacher. And we will be learning today. We will be Talmudists for a few minutes, studying the Gemara and the Rambam. We will be learning ideas that I first heard from my father-in-law, whose name was Shmuel Ephraim ben Naftali Yitzchak, and they are profound ideas, and I hope that our learning today will serve as a merit to his soul. Our subject today is the Soulmate Search. It's not up there anymore. The Soulmate Search. Now, when we use that phrase, soulmate, we generally think of some person who's designed specifically to fulfill my needs, and I am designed to fulfill theirs. And when I find that person, I will be seen and heard and understood and cherished. And it's not just that I won't be alone, I will flourish. And in fact, we might even think that there's some Kabbalistic notion that we heard at some point that there's one soul in heaven that was split in two, and part of it is in one of us and part of it is in the other of us, and when we find each other, we'll just know it. But the truth is that that's not really what the concept of soulmate means. And by studying today, we are going to add far deeper levels of understanding to our interpretations of the word soulmate. We're going to start with studying the Talmud, with looking at the source for this concept of a soulmate. You know, in Yiddish, we say it's called the bashert. You've heard that? There's a bashert. It's predetermined before you're born that there's a bashert. And everybody knows that there's a Gemara that says that 40 days before a child is born or something like that, it's already predetermined who will marry who. That's the Gemara we're going to study. So look at your sheets, okay? I hate to have to do this, but whatever. You saw it here first, okay? Look at the Gemara. This is Gemara Sota, 2a. The Gemara actually, every tractate starts on page 2. Now the Gemara, we have to know, does not write in essay form. It is the oral tradition that helps us flesh out what it is that the Gemara is really saying. So we're going to read a Gemara, and it's going to be cryptic, and it's not going to explain exactly what it's saying. For that, we will go to the Rambam, and beyond the Rambam, we're going to study the ideas of a great Jewish philosopher from the 1400s who was called Rabbi Yitzchak Arama, And he wrote a sefer, a book called the Akedat Yitzchak. It's a deep, dense philosophical book that most people cannot make their way through, but my father-in-law, who was a brilliant man, studied it for 25 years, and due to his efforts, we today will learn something I hope that will be transformative. So look at the Gemara itself. Look at your notes. The Gemara says that when Reish Lakish, one of our great Gemara scholars, would introduce his discussion of the Torah passage of Sota, he would say this. Statement number one. There are 3 statements here about the soulmate. Number 1, heaven matches a woman to a man only according to his actions, and they bring a proof text. Simply, that means the Gemara is saying that 2 people are matched up on no basis other than their deeds, which means their choices, which means what kind of person they've developed themselves into. If a person has made themselves a person of deep values and deep convictions, then they will find somebody who is similar, who shares their values and shares their way of thinking, and that's the only basis that 2 people are compatible and find each other and are matched up together. Now, then the Gemara goes on to say, this matching up of people is as difficult, I didn't highlight this, but if you look in the middle of the paragraph, it is as difficult to match a couple together as the splitting of the sea. That's statement number 2. You know, difficult for who? Difficult for God. Is anything difficult for God? How, what is the Gemara speaking about? No explanation. But that is statement number 2. Bear it in mind. And then statement number 3 at the bottom of the first column says, the Gemara asks, is that so, that a man is matched to a woman according to his actions? But Rav Yehuda says, that Rav says, 40 days before an embryo is formed, a divine voice issues forth and says, the daughter of so-and-so is destined to marry so-and-so. So here's a statement number 3. You say, wait a second, this is not true that a person finds a partner based on what they've made out of themselves. It is actually predetermined 40 days before an embryo is formed. Now, in Jewish law, we consider an embryo formed at 40 days. So what's 40 days before an embryo is formed? The moment of conception. So the Gemara is saying, isn't it true that at the moment of conception, a voice already goes out and says, this one is destined to this one? How could you say it's based on your deeds? Your deeds are your choices. This is predetermination. These 2 statements are in direct contradiction to each other. Agreed? So the Gemara says, we know that. The Gemara says, I understand. Don't worry. This is not a difficulty. No problem. The statement that Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, that it is predetermined at the moment of conception, that is your first match. But the statement that Rabbi Bar Bar Chana says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that you get someone according to your deeds, that is your second match. In Hebrew, this is called your zivug rishon and your zivug sheni. Now, again, the Gemara doesn't write in essay form, and often the solution to the problem or the answer is more complicated than the question. What does this mean? Are we all supposed to have 2 spouses? The first one and the second one? Does that mean that, God forbid, there should be a death or a divorce or polygamy? What does zivug rishon and zivug sheni even mean? And now let's ask some fundamental questions. Let's say this 3rd statement is true, that it's predetermined at the moment of conception. Here are some statements. Number 1, what does the Gemara mean? But number 2, so if it's predetermined at the moment of conception, how do I know when I find my zivug rishon, my first match, the one that is predetermined? How can I tell? Is it because we look alike? We share the same sense of humor. Maybe we have the same values. We just get along. There's a spark between us. Is that how I tell? Unfortunately, no, because all of those qualities can exist between two people who are forbidden to marry each other. Maybe they're already married, or maybe to other people, or maybe they're one of the forbidden relationships in the Torah. It cannot be just compatibility. So how do I know? Number 2, what if I got married and it didn't work out and it was horrible and I ended up getting divorced? Does that mean that I married the one that was predetermined and God wanted me to go through that, or that I didn't get the one that was predetermined and I married the one that I deserved, and now it doesn't work anymore? Like, what is that? What if somebody doesn't, God forbid, live long enough to get married? What happens to their predetermined one? What happens if someone doesn't get married? Can somebody miss their soulmate? Not recognize them, not meet them? What about that? And what about this question? If there is a soulmate predetermined at conception for every person, what about my choices? Like, what if I start my life, I say non-Jewish? Is there a soulmate predetermined for me? Yes. But then let's say I learn and I grow and I decide to become Jewish. Now is there a different soulmate for me? And then what if 5 years later I become Hasidic? Is there some other predetermined soulmate for me? Like, how many alternative soulmates are there? Because I keep changing, and the one who might have been relevant before is no longer relevant, so, what do I do? Any other questions about this predetermined soulmate idea? So, let's make the question even stronger. The greatest of Jewish philosophers, who set it out as his task to write down what we think as Jews and what we believe in, to take the statements of the Gemara and put them into essay form and explain what Jewish philosophy is. The greatest, one of the earliest, is the great Maimonides, Rambam. And Rambam wrote a small treatise called the 8 Chapters. It was an introduction to another sefer, another work called the Ethics of the Fathers. And in the 8 chapters, in chapter 8, he addresses this question. Look into your notes, the Rambam. He says, the statement found in the saying of the rabbis, that all is in the power of God except the fear of God, is nevertheless true and in accord with what we have laid down here. So first he is saying that famous statement that we all learn and we all know, everything is in the hands of God except the fear of God. Meaning that the only area that we really have free choice in is our ethical, moral decisions. Everything else is in the hands of God. Who we are, who we're born to, who our parents are, what we look like, what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, what generation we're born into, what we're exposed to, what happens. This is all in the hands of God. But our ethical and moral choices, that's ours. That's the only thing that's ours, the choices we make. And then he goes on to say, men are, however, very often, meaning mankind, prone to error in supposing that many of their actions, in reality the result of their own free will, are forced upon them, as for instance, marrying a certain woman. In other words, people say that who I marry is predetermined. It's in God's hands. But we just learned, the Rambam says, no, it isn't in God's hands. It's a choice. It's a free choice. And it's wrong to think that it's in the category of predetermination. Now, Rambam knew this Gemara, and he's saying that marriage is not predetermined, that there isn't such a thing as a bashert. And he's saying the reason this is true is because if a man basically marries a woman legally and she becomes his lawful wife, and by his marrying her, he has fulfilled the divine commandment to try to increase and multiply, he's chosen to do a mitzvah. And that's a choice. And that's not predetermined. God does not predetermine that we be righteous or wicked or do mitzvot or violate the Torah or the commandments of God. This is our choice. So how can you say that choosing to get married, which is a mitzvah, is predetermined? So we have a dilemma here, correct? What do we do with these two statements? What does Zivug Rishon and Zivug Sheni actually mean? And then we turn to Rabbi Yitzchak Arama, who takes us to a whole nother level of understanding ourselves, our relationships with others, and our relationship with God. Rabbi Arama says the following: if the decree that was decreed at the moment of conception is true, then diligence regarding one's behavior is false or useless, and the prayer of the righteous is empty and worthless. Meaning, why pray? Why be a better person? It's all predetermined. It's irrelevant. Nobody should try to work towards being the kind of person that would merit them a high-quality spouse. It's predetermined. No prayer is necessary. No improvement of your actions are necessary. It's all already predetermined. He said, this can't be true. That prayer is worthless and self-improvement is false. But rather, he says, what the Gemara means when they said that this applies to Zivug Rishon and that applies to Zivug Sheni, is that we are speaking about two entirely different sorts of matches. The one that is called your first match, your Zivug Rishon, the one that is predetermined from the moment of conception, has nothing to do at all with who you marry. It is the match that God makes between a person's physical reality and the soul that they are given, which will accompany them through their journey in life. It is the zivug, the match between the body and the soul. It has nothing to do with marriage to another person. In Middle Age language, they use terms chomer, tzura, substance and form, physical and spiritual. What he is saying is that there is a match made in heaven at the moment of conception of which soul will accompany which body through its journey in life. Now, as we said, this is in the hands of heaven because God knows at the moment of conception exactly what will be the circumstances of that person through their journey. Like we said before, who are their parents? We don't get to choose that. What generation is it? What's going on in the world? What culture and society are they being brought into? What will they be exposed to? What will they be taught? What will form their mindset? What is their body like? And I just don't mean their physical body, their strengths, their weaknesses, their insights, their talents, perhaps even their genetics. What will happen to them that they have no control over in their lives? God sees the whole picture. And God specifically chooses and designs a soul that is capable of making the best out of the situation that the person will go through in their life. That is your zivug rishon, your first match. Nobody can miss it. Nobody can not find it. Nobody is left without one. And it truly fulfills the person. And it truly gives life to the person and enthusiasm and optimism and hope. Now, he says then that your zivug sheni, the one that's based on your merits, that's the one who comes second. That's why it's called your second match. It comes second in life chronologically, and that's who you choose to marry. Now, clearly, your zivug rishon, the combination of your body and soul, is going to have a very strong impact on later who you marry, depending on your relationship, what we call the shalom bayit, the harmony between this match. Now, there's another section here, I don't think we have time for it, about how the body and soul are referred to as male and female. That is a very Kabbalistic idea. Not for now. But the body and soul are like a match. They are soulmates. And the objective is that they live in peace with each other. And that is not always so easy. In order to know how to bring peace or shalom bayit or harmony in the home between our bodies and our souls, first we have to know what is our soul. What is our soul and what is our soul not? Because the soul is invisible. But if we live in harmony with our soul, that is not invisible. And if we live in disharmony with our soul, that is also not invisible and very, very painful. So the question is, what is our soul? Well, let's eliminate what the soul is not. It's not our body. That we know. Our body eventually erodes, degenerates. It's certainly not anything that has to do with our body or the things we apply to our body. Our possessions, our looks, our wealth, those things that we might identify with and call I, call them I. They're not I. Well, it's also not our emotions. Love and hate are not the soul. Not at all. Animals feel love, animals feel anger, animals feel fear. They don't have a soul like ours. And emotions can go either way. They are not the soul. And the intellect is not the soul. The capacity to logic and to think abstractly, to know math and science and to rationalize everything we'd like to do, that is not the soul. That is the intellectual capacity. Above all three is the Neshamah. The Neshamah is what channels the powers and the strengths of the body, the emotions, and the intellect. What is the Neshamah? In order to understand what the Neshamah is, we have to know that it's what we call a part of God. And we have to explore that for a moment. What is our relationship to God? And this is a fundamental idea. I'm sorry, but I'm also going to repeat it in the next class in Eov. What is our relationship to God? Well, let's say what our relationship to God is not. Because there is a big misconception, even unfortunately sometimes among people that are trained and learned. Our relationship to God is not the following model. God is great creator, big boss man in the sky who decided to create this whole world and gave us rules and told us that if you follow my rules, things will go well for you, and if you don't follow my rules, well, I'm much bigger, and I'm much stronger, and it's not a good idea, and things won't go so well for you, and good luck, and sorry, I know I didn't ask your permission, but I put you in my world, these are the rules, hope you do well, bye. Okay, that is not God, because that reduces a human being to being, again, alone. And also, it's an impossibility because it means that God is limited. God is over here, and I'm over here. Well, then there's something outside of God, and that is not a possibility. This is not the model because it reduces us not only to loneliness, but to fear. And we end up being reduced to making deals with God. If I do this for you, then you do this for me. That's not the model. There's no truth in it. If I be good and keep the laws, you'll make sure that I don't get sick. It isn't true. We are not instrumentalizing and manipulating God, and the model is all wrong. Rather, the model is something very different, and it is something we can all relate to because we've all experienced it for ourselves in our own lives, and I mentioned it last night. The model of our relationship to Hashem is the model of a fetus in the womb of its mother. It is part of the mother's existence. Our Judaism is based on the idea that there is none other, nothing but God, and that means we're part of God's existence. And that means that the love God has for us is actually self-love. And the knowledge God has of us is self-knowledge. What that means is God doesn't do anything nice for us. We are part of God's existence, and thereby we are known and we are loved. It's not like doing something for someone else. When a mother wants to feed her fetus, she doesn't take a spoon and stick it through her abdomen. She just eats. And by virtue of the fact that the fetus is part of her existence, it is sustained. Our relationship to God is that we are part of God's existence. And the Neshamah in us is not our body and not our feelings and not our intellect, but that force above that's constantly saying to us, think, look, discover, what are you part of? What greater being are you part of? Why are you yearning to connect? Where is it coming from? What are you trying to understand, search, explore? And Neshamah tells us two things, that because we are part of God, there are two truths. And that is, number one, that we belong. We belong to someone else's existence. And if we are given the message that we don't belong, that we are alone, that we are not included in someone else's existence, we cannot bear the pain because it's a violation of the essence of who we are. We know that we are designed to belong. And that is why we are pushed to try to feel, to search for that connection, that belonging, and to extend that sense of belonging to everyone around us. If we belong to God, then everybody else could be included in our life. But if we are separate and apart, then everyone else is separate and apart from us. Number one, we belong. And number two, like God, as God himself explains to us in the beginning of the Torah, in chapter 1, what sort of creature we are. We are Tselem Elokim, we are creators. Tselem Elokim means that we are creators, and the reason it means that is that the name Elokim, and this is a fundamental Jewish piece of information they should never forget. The name of God, Elokim, which is one of the many names of God, is the only name that is exclusively found in chapter 1 of Bereshis, Genesis. And that chapter deals only with creation. And so we are called an image of Elokim. We are creators. And the Neshamah in us is driving us to create and to belong. That's the soul. Now, if we listen and are drawn after those messages to discover who we belong to and to create and add something positive to this world, we will begin to live with shalom bayis, with peace, with our soul. But if we say that, if we operate from another place where we are alone and we are irrelevant and we have nothing to add, then we will turn to all kinds of self-destructive mechanisms to soothe the pain. And eventually we'll say, we can't live like this. There's got to be a better way, and we'll go find other roads, ways of healing, ways of reconnecting. That is what the Neshamah does for us. And living in peace with our Neshamah, making this match work out, is our mission in life. How well we do that will determine our choices. What are the kinds of things we choose? And that will determine who we become, which is in our own hands. And that will determine who we find compatible with us. The zivug sheni, the person we actually marry, is not somebody who is put on this earth for the exclusive purpose of fulfilling us. No. Nobody was designed for the purpose of fulfilling someone else. We are designed for ourselves to understand and discover our connection with Hashem. The mashal, the example I always give, is the fetus finally just searching until that uterine wall becomes transparent and it gets to see what it really is part of, what is the source of its existence. We are here to connect to God personally. We are not here to fulfill someone else. That's their journey and their mission and their responsibility. Who we marry is someone who we value, we think we value, and we hope and try and work very, very hard to collaborate and to cooperate and to nurture and build and support each other. And no, we cannot walk anyone else's journey, but we can be by their side as they walk their journey. And that's what marriage is meant to be about, a commitment to that. And that means, on the one hand, that we have to disabuse ourselves of the notion that there's some predetermined person out there whose soul is half of my soul, and I'm going to find them, and then everything's going to be perfect. I know it's kind of like pulling the cushion out from under us, but it's not. It's actually empowering us. Each and every one of us has a soulmate. And what we do with it, and how we let it guide us and transform us, that will be the measure of what kind of person we become. And then the greater we are as a human being, the more inclusive, the more creative, the more we can see the value of another person who's also part of God and also wants to be a creator in their own way. And the more we can nurture them, the better chances we have of building good relationships, both with our spouses, our friends, our children. The greatest act of compassion that a person can do for another person is to believe in them that they too have something to create and to include them in my existence, in our existence, the way God includes us in his existence. And I want to add with one practical application. Chesed, generosity, kindness, that is not doing something nice for someone else. As we said, philosophically speaking, God does not do nice things for others because there really are no others. We're all part of God's existence. Rather, God includes us in his existence. Chesed doesn't require two people, actually, in real life, if you think about it. Chesed is my generosity of spirit, the way I include others in my life. I'm not doing something nice for them. I include them. They're me. So if they're happy, I'm happy for them. And if they're not happy, I'm sad with them. And the first person to discover that we are all included in God's existence, and therefore everyone is part of our existence, is Abraham. Remember the tent of Abraham. What was unique about it? It was open on all four sides, which meant everybody is part of my life. Everybody is welcome. That is the most Jewish of messages. Inclusivity, belonging, connection, partnership with God. That's the Jewish message. And I hope that all of us, on our journeys, day by day, step by step, discover, search really, and explore, and push ourselves, and discover further and further how we are never alone, how we totally and completely belong, and that we are comforted and strengthened and empowered by that knowledge. I'll end here. If anybody has any questions about this subject, I'm more than happy to address them. Did this make sense? And say it again. I'm sorry, what did he say? I can't hear.
Not men.
I don't know. I certainly didn't. There are a few men here. Hey, hey. Men, stand up. There are a few men here. Yes. Thank you. I have classes on Facebook, YouTube, and TorahAnytime.com. Yes. No, we do not choose our parents, but we choose how to view our parents. We choose how to view our parents. First and foremost, they were the messengers to bring us into this world. Okay? Secondly, we have a responsibility to respect them for their playing that role. Respect has certain very basic guidelines. But no, we don't choose our parents. And part of our journey is dealing with the challenges, even if they might be parents, that we are faced with. And not, it comes down to which question we ask in life. Do we ask about everything? About our parents, about nature, about opportunities we're given, about situations we're in? Do we ask, what can I get out of this? What does this do for me? What does this give me? How can I instrumentalize this for my benefit? Or do we ask, what is this teaching me? What is this helping me understand? What new level is this forcing me to achieve? Depends what question we ask. Yes. The zivug sheni is who you choose to marry, which Rambam says is your free choice. And what we said is, it is not predetermined. What we do with our body-soul connection, what we make out of ourselves, how much we live in sync with our soul, and therefore the choices we make based on that, that will determine what kind of person we are. And then based on that, we will find who we feel is on the same page, who is compatible. That will be our choice. It is a function, who we choose sometimes, or is meant to be, the culmination of, or an expression of who we are, what we made out of ourselves. But it is not predetermined according to Rabbi Arama. Yes? So I mentioned that. According to what we're learning today, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. We are, the body and the soul are a pair. And by the way, not just here in this patch of our life, but also through the next stages of our existence, which already is getting into the mystical arena, the resurrection and all that. Our body and our soul are a pair forever. Forever. And that, yes, two halves of a whole. But this is definitely not teaching that who we marry is the other half of our soul. Who we marry is meant to be a person who we value and choose and commit to cooperating with and collaborating with for the great and important job of nurturing each other, hopefully building a family, and passing on our wisdom to the next generation. Back there. Oh, I don't think we have time, but it's online. It in and of itself is another half hour. It's very deep, very mystical, very beautiful, very true, but I can't do it now, I'm sorry. Yes? What? I'm not hearing you. A lot of singles? Why there are so many singles? My personal opinion, which doesn't mean much, it's just my personal opinion, is, well, it's also a whole discussion, but, you know, we're at a stage in history where nobody needs to marry out of fear of being supported or being protected, because we live in an age now where women can support themselves and protect themselves. And so really marriage has come back to what it's meant to be, compatibility, connection, love, collaboration, partnership. And when marriage is all about love and compatibility, okay, we're much more discriminating, and then we could get sidetracked by this idea that this person who I'm supposed to love and be compatible with is designed to fulfill all my needs. And then if somebody doesn't fulfill all my needs, I feel like something's missing. But like we said before, this is fundamental. Nobody is put on earth for the exclusive purpose of fulfilling someone else. And so this could be one issue. There's many other causes. This is just in line with what we've been saying, you know, something that I feel applies, but there's so many other demographic and logistical reasons, you know, and that's a talk in and of itself. Yes?
Why then, if we have a zivug, a soulmate, when you get married, they say mazal tov. Mazal is all about randomness, and yet somebody is bashert unto you. There's no randomness to it.
Correct. So this term mazal, you know, which we apply as like, oh, it's just good luck. It actually doesn't mean good luck, and it's used all over the place. You know, mazal tov, and it's lost its meaning. But when someone gets married, you know, should we say, oh, what, you know, this is your mazel, this is your fate, this you have a great, you're right. It's not appropriate. You're 100% right. We should say to them, we wish you success in this venture of cooperating and collaborating and nurturing another person who is nothing necessarily like you, but who you have to work with and appreciate. We wish you, we wish you success, and we're here for you all along the way. Would be a much better wish. Thank you, everyone.